Hey guys, welcome back. Zen Cop here, Mac Rollins. It is the 9th. It's Easter Sunday. Just kind of hanging out after doing some stuff with the family earlier. Nothing crazy, but anyway, hope you guys are having a good Sunday. And welcome back. Thank you again for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and the usual. So I kind of have a heavy topic to talk about, but I feel like if this topic is not hammered into the ground, then we really won't ever see any real major changes. And I think it is going to be best for our future, and not just my future, but for everyone's, if we as a society don't start to acknowledge that we have a major disconnect right now with the way that law enforcement is experiencing just kind of this pendulum swing that's just now sort of coming to rest, but it's also not. And this podcast will also for sure segue into a blog post that I'm going to do later at the same time. So they're definitely going to be one and the same. And I think it's very important that if you are a supervisor, administrator, anything that is going to otherwise champion change in the realm of law enforcement and champion change where we need it, then I encourage you to listen and also to read. I think that there's two different ways that we interpret or absorb information. Listening and reading for me are two very different things. And if I have the time and the ability, I would love to read, but most of the stuff that I listen to or otherwise give attention to is usually on the road. So in the form of a podcast or something like that, or an audiobook, but do both if you can. So this will be an open letter to command staff and supervisors nationwide from me. And the title of this post will be, "Is anybody listening?" And, do we see a future that is realistic for this profession? Those of us who are still, quote unquote, on the road, doing stuff on the street, I think that opinion would be very different to someone who has otherwise promoted and is making a very comfortable salary with benefits that are, better than the average boot on the ground. And I get it. They earned that spot. That's fine and all. But to have those individuals making decisions for the rest of us, that can lead to problems. And we're seeing those problems now. And when I talk about the cops that are slowly, fading away or not necessarily interested anymore, those are going to be the cops who eventually they finished their last day on the job, and not for retirement, but leaving this career field entirely. And the sad part is that cop, he or she wasn't one of the ones who couldn't hack it. Not a short stroke boot who couldn't make the cut, not some punk kid who thought he needed to show society who was boss, not a lackadaisical officer safety nightmare trainee. No, this cop who chose to walk away, with many years on the job, finally realized that enough was enough. And the sad part is even on their departure, nobody listened, nobody cared. And despite this cop making up their minds a long time ago, it probably would have been nice to hear some type of concern as his departure became a known reality among the agency, right? I mean, short of quitting on the spot, there's no real way to Houdini or sneak out the back door without your department knowing something's in the works. And we all know how that goes. You can start the process and you can keep that information all to yourself, but this community is large, but it's also very, very small. And once that becomes known information in the department, well then yeah, the rumor mill is going to be smoking and everyone's going to know eventually. And for purposes of the blog and this podcast, some people would ask if I'm speaking directly about a certain individual or employee. And my answer is no. I'm speaking about many individuals and employees, some of which I have known firsthand and worked with for many, many years, and some of which I have had the pleasure of meeting in person over the years from agencies all over the nation. And the speaking point on cops leaving, it's not some anomaly that it's just occurring out of nowhere. It's been building up for years, and a lot of cops are finally making the choice to address the issues we are facing. And if those issues are not addressed, or more importantly, those issues are not heard by those by those that need to hear them, then the employee is forced to live in a very toxic working environment or break the cycle. And if you've listened to my podcast or read my blogs before, you've heard me talking about cycle breakers. And cycle breakers are people who see a toxic environment, they acknowledge it, and then they make it a point to break it and then leave. And they are rare in the arena of law enforcement, but they are becoming increasingly more active over the last 2 years in particular. And me, myself, I consider myself to be a cycle breaker, but a cycle breaker who is trying to break the cycle from within the agency, from within law enforcement, right? I'm here, like me doing all this stuff, podcast, blog, whatever. I'm trying to break that issue that we are facing as a career field, not just case by case or agency by agency. That being said, there are also cycle breakers who fully acknowledge that they can no longer remain in a toxic working environment, and they ultimately choose to leave. Now, a word of warning to those of you who are thinking, well, this may all be true, but the people who are leaving are doing so on good terms, and they didn't express any ill will towards the agency. And I agree. However, consider the leap of faith that the employee is taking by leaving their agency as a 10, 15, or even 20-year cop, and the unknown abyss that comes with stepping out those doors. Yeah, they've done their homework and they've acquired new employment, but what if that employment doesn't work out, right? What if the grass was greener on the other side and now they're knee deep in the weeds looking at green pastures where they once were? That's kind of terrifying when you think about it. And at the end of the day, this is not a social dynamic or relationship. It's a means for us to make money and eventually retire. And my point is, all cops have contingency plans in every pocket. So why on earth would we ever badmouth the agency or even be candid with an administration that may watch us come crawling back someday? And believe me, I know it happens because I've seen it happen more than a few times with my own eyes. I've seen people walk away from my agency. They would go elsewhere, only to realize it wasn't as great as they thought it would be. And ultimately they chose to come back and, kiss the proverbial ring, asking for their job back. And in a strange way, when I saw this happen, it was almost like the administration enjoyed that power, and they enjoyed people, enjoyed seeing them leave only to return within that year. And, on that note, though, there were also some who left and they never returned. And these incidents, all of what I'm referencing now, these were before the year 2020, which I truly believe will be the biggest paradigm shift for law enforcement over the next few decades, if not much longer. And the year 2020 was, in fact, the ultimate test for a variety of agencies nationwide. Cops were, they were finally able to pull back the curtain and meet the wizard. And to their disappointment, it really wasn't what they were hoping for. They saw the harsh and ugly truth. They saw that they were not valued at all. They saw politics clouding over a variety of issues, and ultimately many cops were left with a really bitter taste in their mouths. And even with regime changes, management, people being moved around or replaced, the boots on the ground still remembered how they were treated for the better part of 6 months and even further. Excuse me, I just had kombucha. That's not a hippie thing. It actually helps with my gut health. Anyway, it's good. Try it. We looked at tactics, use of force updates. They were constant and nothing remotely good. New policies were implemented that pretty much endangered cops and emboldened criminals. Now, we had new Senate and Assembly bills. They'd be passed very easily and very quickly. And those bills only appeased the masses who were screaming for, quote unquote, social justice reform, and ultimately made it harder for cops to avoid another terrible situation like we saw in 2020. Now, on top of that, law enforcement agencies would cut their most proactive crime-fighting units, and in some scenarios, some cities reduced their police force by over 40%. And all this progressive action, and cops were still expected to do their job the same way, if not better, than they were before, with less tools, less staffing, and overall less motivation to do the job. And people truly wonder why nobody wants to do this job anymore. Something that happened recently in Minneapolis, the city flew a position, right? They flew a position for what they called a community commission on police oversight. You would be a CCPO member. And that would basically be someone's job in a group setting or however it worked out to basically make sure that cops were doing their job the right way and doing all that stuff, right? So they posted that job. And for that one position, there were over 200 applicants for the position of CCPO. In that same posting, they flew the position of police officer 1, whatever the equivalent is, basically police officer, and a total of 2 applicants. 2 applied. That's the problem. That's where we have the disconnect. And my question that I pose to the leadership and the admins of law enforcement is, what have you done or what are you doing to ensure that your employees feel as if they are appreciated within your agency? And sometimes we confuse the word valued with the word appreciated. Both are complementary and they should be viewed as such. They're positive words, right? But being valued, however, that would imply that the employer considers you to be a benefit. You are beneficial to the agency, okay? And while we can, again, all agree that being valued is important, being appreciated recognizes the employee's full worth to the agency, as opposed to just the benefits that person will provide. Now, looking at the characteristics side by side, would you rather your employee recognize your benefits to the agency or your full worth, right? One certainly sounds more long-term, career building, stable, and overall a lot more genuine than the other, right? And realistically, at the end of the day, despite any words I may share or experiences that we can all agree are quite linear, the bottom line is if you have tried and tried and tried and nothing is changing, maybe it really is time for you to go somewhere else. And there's an enormous difference between complaining about something and identifying problems and providing solutions. And in a time where morale is very low, the biggest mistake any administrator can make is listening to the advice from coworkers or peers who are currently on the same pay scale with the same benefits and the same retirement. The likelihood of both of them agreeing that nothing is wrong and morale is fine is going to be highly probable, with no cause for concern for the boots on the ground, the very public presence of your agency in every way, shape, or form. And quite literally, no cause or concern for anything, as it is very hard to see these issues from the highest point of the castle, right? With shared company that eats and sleeps the same as you do. In so many words, you're not going to get a valid opinion from someone who's living the same lifestyle you are. That's it. And the bottom line, again, is if there are problems that exist within your agency and you have good employees who are proactive, in the hunt for remedies to improve morale and willing to help implement those remedies, you should probably listen to them. And I assure you, when the time comes and nothing has moved and nothing has changed, they will be the first people to leave your department and go somewhere else where they are truly appreciated. And we are watching it happen in real time, and no one gives a fuck. That's a problem. The best part is, the leftovers you'll be stuck with as an agency will consist of those who were pretty much willing to bitch the whole time, but never willing to help. You'll be stuck with those who were salty from birth and who never cared about public perception. You'll be stuck with those who picked this job for the wrong reasons. You'll be stuck with those who will hold out as long as they can, jaded and angry. And you will also be stuck with those who will be a human question mark after they pass field training and wander into the parking lot with enough liability strapped to their belt to mimic that of an atom bomb. In a sentence, the cops who never should have been cops to begin with. And in that regard, good luck with your future endeavors as an agency. Guys, that's it. I wanted to keep it short and to the point today. Again, like, subscribe, follow. Any suggestions, drop them in the comments. You can find me on Instagram at the Zen Cop and Twitter, but I don't tweet. YouTube, you're here now listening to it. Guys, appreciate it, and I'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.